Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Brad Meltzer, and he's here to share with us his two new children's books, I Am Anne Frank and I Am Benjamin Franklin. Now, have you ever asked yourself, do our children today have inspiring role models to look up to? The Ordinary People Change the World book series by New York Times #1 bestselling author Brad Meltzer gives our children people to really admire, while learning how to build character, kindness, and compassion. Now, many of you know Brad Meltzer. He's been on the show before. He's one of my favorite people. He's the #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Escape Artist and many other bestselling thrillers, as well as the Ordinary People Change the World book series. He's also the host of the History Channel's TV show Brad Meltzer's Decoded and Brad Meltzer's Lost History, which he used to help find the missing 9/11 flag that the firefighters raised at Ground Zero. So let's welcome to the show, Brad Meltzer.
So good to be back.
Oh my goodness, what an honor it is to have you back, Brad, and to talk about these two new books. Why did you pick these two people?
As you know, we started this children's book series because I was tired of having my kids look up to people who are famous for being famous and loudmouth athletes and thinking that that's a hero. I wanted to give my kids better heroes to look up to, heroes of character, heroes of kindness and generosity and resilience. And when, we started with I Am Amelia Earhart, we did I Am Abraham Lincoln, and I Am Rosa Parks, and Albert Einstein. And we've done 20 different books in the series. But the reason we picked these two new ones is, as we always do, is we look for those lessons that we can give our own kids. And for the two newest books, we had I Am Benjamin Franklin and I Am Anne Frank. And Benjamin Franklin is, my youngest son is creative. I wanted him to have an inventor. I hadn't done an inventor yet. And there is no greater, amazing, inspiring inventor like Benjamin Franklin. He even gives Leonardo da Vinci a run for his money. And I thought that was an important part of history, especially now to discuss, when our own history has come under fire so much. And I think the most important book, maybe the most important we've ever worked on, is I Am Anne Frank, because I looked around at the way that people were being targeted for their religion, for their skin color, for their beliefs, and realized that it was Anne Frank who could show us real lessons to look up to, real resiliency, and most important, the only way you ever fight back against hate is with hope. And I wanted my kids, especially in this world we live in today, to have hope. So I Am Anne Frank was written for my kids for that.
Well, I'm so glad you've written these two books. And I think old, young, people of all ages really love and appreciate this book series that you have. When you were doing your research for Anne Frank, was there anything that stuck out for you?
Yeah, there's every book, when we do these books, we always focus on the person when they're children. But in this one, our hero was always a child, sadly, right? So, but we all know the story of Anne Frank. We know the story of 6 million Jews dying in the Holocaust, and here she is in this attic. And we know that story. Hopefully, sadly, it's not taught as much today, but it is taught. And what I didn't realize was Anne Frank, the little girl. A little girl who, when she was born, her sister loved laughing at her big ears. As a little girl, loved the same things that many kids love, playing hide and seek. She loved playing tag. She loved to ice skate. She would take her sister's ice skates and go skating. And she loved going to the movies. She collected autographs and used to know the names of every celebrity, including one of her favorites, Rin Tin Tin, the famous dog. And those are the things that kind of get lost in the story. We always take our heroes and we build these great monuments to them. You can go visit the Anne Frank house, and that's a wonderful monument to her. But you forget sometimes when you go to these empty monuments, or even if you go to the Lincoln Memorial, you forget that they were real people. And just to see those details about Anne Frank, that is what really kind of sunk home with me. It's just, just seeing her as a little girl as opposed to an icon.
Yes, I mean, she means so much to so many people. And I think this story brings a lot of hope to people now, kind of reminding them, hey, hope never dies. There's always hope.
That's exactly right. In fact, I'll read you one of my favorite sections from the book, and it says, in my life, there were many reasons to be sad and lonely and scared, but there were also many reasons to love and laugh and hope. You can always find light in the darkest places. That's what hope is. It's a fire within you. You decide when to light it, and when it burns bright, nothing can put it out. And I need my daughter to hear that lesson. I need my sons to hear that lesson. I love the fact that people use our books to build libraries of real heroes for their kids and their grandkids and their nieces and their nephews. But when you look around today, those stories inspire us. In fact, one of my favorite things, actually, one of the details just jumped to my mind to answer your question, is when Anne Frank was in the attic, one of the things she always looked at was she always loved this tree that was outside her window. It was a chestnut tree. And she would focus on this tree. You can see when you read I Am Anne Frank, you can see the tree in all the different seasons with snow on it, when the leaves come off, and then when it comes back again in the summer and spring. And in 2010, the chestnut tree was blown down in a storm. But they took the saplings from the tree and they planted new chestnut trees all across the country. And today, there are trees all over the world, locations everywhere, where her tree still blooms. And I was blown away by that. That was the best real life metaphor I'd heard in so long. That was one of those hopeful moments for me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. It just touches the heart to hear that, and just how, simple things can bloom into so much that means so much for other people and provide some hope in so many different ways.
And listen, it's one thing to say, when we did these books, I always wonder, are we doing it right? Can you write about the Holocaust in Anne Frank for little kids? I mean, this is for kids, 5 to 12 years old, really young. But what I love is the response we're already getting from people who are just like, this is exactly the book I needed for my daughter. I mean, we don't know where the world's going to be. We didn't know where the virus was going to be. But this is a time right now where our culture, our kids are anxious. As adults, we're anxious. Our whole culture is anxious. Our leaders make us anxious. Everyone is anxious. And in those times of, what do you need? You need reassurance. You need hope more than ever. So we kind of just stumbled into this time period where we were offering, I Am Anne Frank. But, listen, we get nice reviews, we get bad reviews, we get all kinds of reviews. But this book, I've never seen a review like it. It said this was the standout. This was the one of the whole series. And what we did with the art is when you read I Am Anne Frank and she goes into the attic, we actually made the pages of the book, instead of just being, it looks like almost like a comic book, like a graphic novel, we made the pictures shrink. So a lot of black space on top and on the bottom. So it's like a letterbox screen. And then slowly the space shrinks smaller and smaller, narrower and narrower. So you literally watch her being closed in around her as she's living in this attic for all these years. And Chris Eliopoulos, our amazing artist, has an art style that's a little bit like Charlie Brown meets Calvin and Hobbes. And it just makes Anne Frank and I Am Anne Frank come to life.
Yes, it's such beautiful artwork that builds that helps to build that story for, people who are reading the book, regardless what age. And, it's interesting. Here we are in a time where, people are either choosing to isolate or isolating. I think a lot of people can really relate to maybe a little bit of what Anne Frank had gone through with just being enclosed.
Yeah, and listen, it says in the book, in the Jewish faith, there's a saying that if you save one life, it's as if you've saved an entire world. And throughout your life, you're going to find people who need help. And we want to encourage people, be a helper. Be the one who does the right thing. When you see something unfair, do not be silent. It's going to be hard. But when it is, you got to look up. You got to see the beauty of the world, and you got to see the beauty in people. And I love the fact that when we hear that story, Anne Frank is indeed alive again. Her story is alive again. Her message is alive again. And I think it's, we know she's become this icon because it took kind of the innocence of this little girl. And everyone always talks about the innocence of this little girl, but there's nothing innocent about it. She's going through the Holocaust, and her advice is not adorable or cute. It's right. Her advice is right. We have to rely on helpers. We have to be helpers ourselves, and we have to find hope in those darkest of places.
Yeah, we can all learn a lot from Anne Frank's story. And I Am Anne Frank is such a great book for, again, people of all ages. I know you have a certain age range for it, but again, a lot of people can learn from that. When we look at your story, I Am Benjamin Franklin, what kind of surprised you with that book?
Yeah, Ben Franklin is, again, one of these people who we all know the cliches, right? If I woke you up in the middle of the night and I said, tell me about Ben Franklin, you'd say, a kite, electricity, little glasses. You just know those things. They're kind of part of the American psyche. What I love is, again, those details when he's a kid. When Ben Franklin is a little boy, he loves swimming. And he loves swimming so much, he was trying to figure out how to swim faster. And he realized that the bigger your hands and feet are, the more water you can push with them, like paddles. So he started to experiment. He made two big kind of mitts that had holes for his thumbs, like almost putting like a baseball glove on your hand. And he made a set for his feet, like kind of early flippers. And he started swimming really fast. And then he started experimenting with a kite, right? Again, he's so obsessed with kites. But he would take the kite, he'd run by a nearby pond, and he'd get the kite in the air. And when the kite was high in the air, he'd go into the pond and float on his back, and he'd let the kite pull him across the water because he wanted to see what it would do. And it worked. And I love the fact that if you're willing to experiment, you can learn something new and you can use it to improve things. But to me, what surprised me most and I love the most about Benjamin Franklin is the best thing he tries to improve is himself. That's his actual philosophy. He writes to be a better person, rules of conduct to live by. He calls it his plan for future conduct. And he says, be frugal. Don't spend your money on things you don't need. He says, number 2, tell the truth. Number 3, work hard. 4th, don't speak badly about other people. And I love those details, but he realizes it's really hard to improve yourself every day. He makes a whole list, 13 things in total, like you should be silent, you should be in order, you should be frugal, you should be moderate, you should be clean, you should be, humility. But he realizes they're all really hard to pull off at once. So he says, you know what? I'm just going to do one virtue every week, just one virtue every single week. And we're going to be cleanly this week, be clean this week. Next week, I'll do moderation, everything in moderation. And I realized over time as I was researching him that is Ben Franklin's great legacy, is if you want to change the world, it starts by changing yourself. We all spend so much time today complaining about everybody else. But the great truth of Ben Franklin is we have to change ourselves first, not point the finger and blame other people. We got to remember that humility. We got to remember that. And that's how the world gets to be a better place.
That is so true. I mean, all change happens within ourselves, and to have a book that points to that, especially for young people, what great encouragement that is.
Yeah, and again, because I think it's fun to read it, we get to do it together. This is what I wrote about Ben Franklin. He says, in my life, I worked hard to improve things, including improving myself. That doesn't come easy. When you're trying to improve things, there will always be a risk of failure. Don't let it stop you. By learning from failures, you make progress because new ideas are like lightning. They can appear instantly, striking from nowhere with staggering power. That power is yours. Use it wisely, and you change the world. And that's the man, what he did. I mean, he invented bifocals and the lightning rod and all these amazing things. But his legacy is so beyond just a couple of interesting inventions or working on the Declaration of Independence or working on the Constitution, like all these incredible things that he has a hand in.
When you were a young boy, Brad, did you have role models like the ones that you're building for your children? Were there people that you looked up to?
It's funny. When I was 5 years old, people like Jim Henson and Mr. Rogers and Walt Disney taught me that you could use your creativity to put good into this world. And that is all, to this day, I'm still trying to do, is use my own creativity to put some good into this world. And that's what our kids' books do. When the election, I don't know if I told you this story, but a few years ago, 4 years ago, when the election of 2016 was happening for the presidency, Donald Trump and Hillary were arguing every day on television. And as the election was approaching, 2 of our books started selling better than any others. They were I Am Martin Luther King Jr. and I Am George Washington. And it wasn't a Democrat or Republican thing. It was that parents and grandparents on both sides were tired of turning on the TV and seeing politicians when what they wanted to show their kids were leaders. And we all know there's a huge difference between a politician and a leader. And I love the fact that now people use our books, whether it's I Am Walt Disney or I Am Amelia Earhart or I Am Abraham Lincoln or I Am Anne Frank or Benjamin Franklin, but they use our books to buy and build those libraries, as I said, for their kids, for their grandkids, for their nieces, for their nephews.
Well, Brad, my goodness, we can be here all day. I just love your work. I'm a big fan of both your children's books and your adult books. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn about both?
Yeah, so they can go to bradmeltzer.com and they can go to our website. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter and Instagram. But they can also go to the series, which is ordinarypeoplechangetheworld.com. And they can see not just our books, but we do story times where you can show kids. It's me reading to your kids. We even got Billie Jean King when we did I Am Billie Jean King. We had her read her own books. You can see Billie Jean King read to your children. So go to ordinarypeoplechangetheworld.com or bradmeltzer.com. And the books are obviously available everywhere books are sold, from Amazon to independent stores, to Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and anywhere in between. And obviously, I thank you to everyone who buys them as Christmas and Hanukkah and holiday presents. That means the most. But I will say this. I never make this pitch. But when we did I Am Anne Frank now, I hope listeners out there will consider buying a copy and donating it to a synagogue, to a church, to a group out there, to a classroom, because I think kids out there right now could really use that reassurance.
Yeah, definitely use a little hope. And what a great thing to do for your community. Well, Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, so good to be back always. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Brad. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your two new books, I Am Anne Frank and I Am Benjamin Franklin. Again, if you'd like to connect with Brad, you can at bradmeltzer.com for more information or ordinarypeoplechangetheworld.com. There you can find great information on the books and learn more about the upcoming books in his series. While we're at the end of our time today, I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.